Can you dig it? Welcome to IDP Nation's spin-off podcast talking about college IDP and Devy IDP prospects. We are your hosts, Dan Cook, Daryl Winstead, and Eric Harrell. We are the IDP Devy grind. Can you dig it? And I think I butchered that. I think it's the Devy IDP grind. That's where we get the dig. That's where we get the dig from. So the idea behind this podcast is a lot of us, not a lot of us, but a lot of our listeners weren't huge fans of the college interviews and college speak all the time. So we decided that we would kind of split the two shows and make a new one and talk more about college IDP and Devy college prospects and spend more time on that rather than just Daryl's Devy Diamond and then, come draft time we're talking about these guys like they're brand new to people. So if you're listening to this, these guys will be household names pretty much for you. And since I am not the expert in college, I'm just here to hit record and hang out, I guess. We brought on another college IDP fanatic, Eric Harrell here. So, Eric, how are you?
I'm good. How about you guys?
Doing pretty good. So Eric is the guy that roped us into a college IDP league, which Daryl will tell you 5,000 times. This is the 5,001st time that he won this year.
That's right.
So we figured when we were going about this, we needed somebody that's a fanatic about this stuff, not just somebody that's that likes IDP and kind of pays attention to college. So that's the idea here. So that's what we're going to kind of go with. We'll try to pick a different topic every week. You can let us know what topics you want to hear about. On this week's show, the inaugural show here, we're going to talk about a position that is big for IDP and big for college IDP as well, the linebacker position. And we're going to talk about the 2020 linebackers to own in college IDP, as well as names to keep on your radar for the Devy prospects if you have a Devy draft coming up. I know I have a few that will be right around draft time for Devy, so maybe I won't have to ask Daryl this year. I'll already know the answers to some of this stuff. But we do have some news and notes to go with. So, Daryl, why don't you kick off our news and notes for the Dig podcast here?
All right, we're going to I'll try to dig up some of the biggest news and notes of the week for us. So, no pun intended there, but the things that I think that'll be most interesting or most significant to the Devy world. So up first is edge rusher Justus Reed. He's entered the transfer portal as he wants to leave Youngstown State. Now, he's mentioned LSU, Virginia Tech, Florida State, Texas Tech as some landing spots. But with Bo Pelini leaving Youngstown State, who was his head coach there, he went to LSU. So it's interesting that he's got LSU on the list. That he's really a pretty good pass rusher. I mean, did really well for them. So it'll be, if he can get into a Division I school, it'll be interesting to see how he can translate his game to that level of play. But LSU could be in the front running for him. And then number 2, we've got Oregon. I know this is a little bit of old news. Once we get going, I'll keep this up to date each week. But Oregon flipped and signed defensive lineman Jayson Jones, a 4-star, big old boy, 6'5", 322 as a freshman. That's pretty.
That's a big
huge. That's a monster. And you put him with Justin Flowe, who everybody knows, the linebacker that they signed this year, and then last year's stud defensive end, 5-star Kayvon Thibodeaux. I don't know about you, Eric, but I'm loving what Oregon is putting together defensively.
That's a three good defensive guys that they're just going to wreak havoc on the Pac-12.
Yeah. If they don't terrorize them, there's something wrong. I mean, you're hitting your interior, your end, and your linebacker. They're going to cause a lot of problems for a lot of people.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, and as a person that doesn't really follow college as much as maybe you guys do, it seems like this year the transfer portal seems to be like coming up more and more. Is it because they've changed the rules recently of transferring? Is that why we see so many students entering the transfer portal with hopes to play immediately?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if you're gonna, if they're changing rules and you don't want to sit behind somebody for 2 years, I think you're gonna get a chance to play right away. They're gonna jump at that, even if it's a lesser school. They just want to play, get on the field.
Yeah, and you look at Justin Fields being one of those guys last year that
even Joe Burrow.
Yeah. Yeah,
I think King from Houston is another one. He's transferring from Houston to Miami. Was it Miami?
Yeah. It's just interesting because you
I missed that one.
Yeah, it's just interesting because I don't ever remember this being the case. Like it was like you're just stuck. Like you're stuck. I think they're giving the players.
I don't think I've heard it so much as we have this year either. So
I guess they're maybe lessening the requirements because it used to be like it used to be like impossible to transfer, like you were just stuck, and now it seems like now it seems like it's a weekly thing. Like you hear somebody else is entering the transfer portal, you hear somebody else is going. One of my guys that I have, Booby Whitlow from Auburn, is entering the transfer portal, and I'm like, he was a starter for Auburn, like at top SEC school, and he's transferring. I guess he saw the writing on the wall that maybe he's not going to be the guy. I don't know, but that's for another show.
But I think it's a good thing for the players because you've got coaches moving and going different places, and once these players commit, they're kind of locked in. So I think if coaches can move and do this, I think players should be able to too. So I like it. If you're in the Devy world, I just think you got to kind of pay a little closer attention. Because I think you're going to see more and more of this going forward.
Just to step back to Oregon, they also signed what was his name? Noah Sewell, 10th ranked player, the inside linebacker. So,
oh yeah,
and their defenses next year, here could wreak havoc.
It's good for my son.
Oh yeah,
he's a Ducks fan. He liked the Oregon Ducks from the NCAA football game when he could play with the mascots. So he became a Ducks fan when he could play with ducks on the field. That's his love affair with Oregon started then. So.
I'm with you. Oregon is going to be – the cupboard is full right now. You mentioned that guy, the inside linebacker. You got Justin Flowe. You got Kayvon Thibodeaux, who was last year's big prize. And then for them to flip a guy from Alabama, I think that says a lot. One, Alabama's stacked always, so maybe this kid's like, maybe I want more playing time somewhere. But he's a big recruit, and he's a monster. 6'5", 322 for a freshman. That is freaking insanely huge.
Yep.
And
big boy. You
put him with those linebackers and that defensive end, I think they're building something special, especially in a league where they don't play a lot of defense, kind of. Mm-hmm. Everybody's talking about them losing Troy Dye, but I don't know that they're going to miss a beat, really, with him being gone.
Well, it might have just opened up a door for Justin Flowe to play right away.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's great, really.
Any other news and notes to share there?
No, not this week. I just kind of wanted to get a few out there to kind of get us set where we're going and what we'll be looking at as far as news and notes. I think it's a little bit different from what me and you do on IDP Nation. So with the recruiting and all that stuff. So, but just kind of giving the people an idea and being able for me and you and Eric to kind of bounce ideas off of and see what's going on in the world of college.
Yeah, so we want to get this rolling out here. We don't quite have a different feed yet. I don't know if we're going to go with the different feed. But we'll see. We don't have a logo yet. We don't have a lot of stuff yet, but we wanted to get this rolling here because we felt like it's something that was a missing piece in the landscape, so to speak, of a IDP-specific college, maybe not college, but Devy focusing on fantasy football. Because I'm sure there's plenty of college podcasts out there. Not that I really have checked them out, but we just wanted to kind of soft open with this and gauge our listening audience. I know we have a few loyal listeners that would love to hear whatever information we can pass along, and just getting familiar with some of these names. Yeah. Just getting familiar with some of these names. Me not being a huge college football guy, like I work every Saturday pretty much, so I don't really get to watch every game, especially the early games. But some of these guys I know, and Daryl always brings up these guys I never heard of. And we also wanted to give a platform for these college athletes to come on and speak with us and speak with a little bit more, maybe have a little bit more time, have a little bit more time devoted back to the regular NFL IDP, because when we did have the interviews, those shows were kind of short on IDP Nation, so we wanted to kind of give the audience what they want. And if you really love these shows, they will have a slightly different title, so you can find them a little bit easier. And if it starts to take off, then we'll get its own feed and let you know where to find that. But for now, it's in your IDP Nation RSS feed. You'll get it automatically. We'll let you know if there's any changes in that. If you love it, give us 5 stars and let us know that you love this, and we'll continue to bring more of it. That's the plan going forward through the off season. We have a lot of things planned as far as, spring practices are always a hot topic in college. Those will be coming up in a few months here. And we'll leave most of the draft talk to IDP Nation. And maybe we'll have Eric on to talk some rookies, since we're going to stick to college here. And speaking of sticking to college here, our main event this week is the top 5. Each of these guys have top 5 linebackers to buy in 2020. Guys to get in your college IDP leagues, as well as if you have a Devy draft coming up and you can draft defense on Devy. I have a couple of them. Who are you looking to target? And I don't have a list because I am not as knowledgeable as these two gentlemen. I'm just here to kind of listen and get information, take notes, and let these two hash it out. So, Daryl, we'll start with you here, and this first guy.
We're just going to do one at a time, or?
Yeah, we're going to bounce back and forth. So,
okay.
So go with your one here.
All right. So my first guy on my list, and you've probably heard him mentioned on IDP Nation, is Micah Parsons, the inside linebacker for Penn State. What he did as a freshman was amazing, led the team in tackles, and then he did not disappoint again last year. Really not, in my opinion, there's really not nothing he can't do. He can rush the passer, he can drop in coverage. I mean, he's a tackling machine. And I think, if he comes out next year, I think he's probably going to be your LB1, in my opinion, for the draft. Now, I don't know if he'll come out or stay for his senior year, but right now he's definitely my number 1 linebacker, especially in Devy leagues.
Yeah, it's interesting because Penn State used to be linebacker U, and then they have kind of fallen off the radar. So, Eric, who's your number 1 guy as well?
I also got Wow. He was just phenomenal as a freshman, and he like Daryl said, it did the same thing last year as a sophomore. One of those guys that can do it all. Linebacker U, just said he could be linebacker 1 I mean, if he comes out next year or even the year after that, it could still be linebacker 1. It just, when will he come out?
Yeah.
Right.
And
I think that's a lot of the question is, when will these guys come out? So I think the quicker we recognize and can get this info to you, it will help people like Dan and those that are in Devy drafts. They can kind of jump on it a little quicker. So hopefully this helps you.
So Eric, while we got you, who's your number 2 guy?
I have Patrick Nelson from SMU. So last year he had 12 and a half sacks. I guess he's more kind of an edge type guy. He had 12 and a half sacks last year. Guy just kind of plays the hybrid safety edge, kind of all over the field, kind of like a Thomas Davis or a Derwin James type guy. But he really did 12 and a half sacks last year, like I said. So he has the stuff.
Yeah. Daryl, how about you?
At my number 2, I have Dylan Moses of Alabama. If he didn't get hurt this season, he's probably coming out and probably a top. He probably pushes Isaiah Simmons for the top linebacker off the board. I think he's that good. Unfortunately, he had an injury this year, and it cost him all season. People thought he would come out anyway, and he didn't want to. I think it was. I get it. Coming back, you don't want to come back and risk getting hurt again and losing that money. But for him, I think he made the right decision. My stock's not going to be this high because I've been out all year. I want to come back, put together a great season for probably one of the top 5 programs in the country. And if Parsons is not there, he's definitely the LB1, and I don't know that he's not 1B to Parsons 1A. As much as I love Parsons, Dylan Moses is just as good. A little bit different style of linebacker. I think he's a little more pro-ready right now because he's, a year ahead of Parsons. He'll be a senior where Parsons is a junior, but I think he's a little more pro-ready and probably offers a little more pass rush. As far as tackling, he's very close to Parsons. I mean, they're both just tackling machines. They swallow up everything that comes towards them. So it'll be interesting to see. He wants to come back and rehab that value. And right now, I think he's, if Parsons stays, Dylan Moses is probably your number 1 linebacker next year in next year's draft.
Yeah, and I have him in a Devy league, and I think that's, if he didn't get injured, I think he's coming out this year. But I think he decided to stay and try to up his stock a little bit. Micah Parsons, just to kind of go back to him a little bit, had about the same amount of solos, but picked up a whole lot more assists this year. Also 14 tackles for loss, 5 sacks this year. Has kind of stepped up his game completely here. And now he's entering his sophomore season. And Patrick Nelson is going into his 5th year of eligibility.
I think that's what.
Okay.
Yeah. So, going back to, Daryl, that was your second guy, Dylan Moses. How about your third guy?
Yeah, and this is a guy you may recognize the name, and some of my followers definitely will recognize the name. I'm going with, he'll be a junior this year. I'm going with Iowa State inside linebacker Mike Rose. Did a piece on that trio up there, and I really like what Rose does. I mean, he's a 75 tackles as a freshman, 77 as a sophomore, 18 and a half career tackles for a loss, 4 sacks, does really good in coverage. He's not a liability. He's not going to give you those big numbers, but man, he just seems to fly to the football and just really impressive. I mean, you can plug him anywhere in a 3-4 or a 4-3 on the inside, and he's going to be your guy. So, yeah, I look for him to take a big step forward as a junior. And, again, this is another one. Does he come out in 2021 or does he stay for his senior season and becomes the 2022 candidate? We don't know, but he's definitely one you want on your Devy teams right now.
All right. And, Eric, how do you have at number 3?
I have Nate Landman from Colorado as my number 3. Kind of one of those guys that's all over the field. Kind of reminds me of Luke Kuechly, actually, a little bit. Just got one of those guys just all over the field. He can last year, I think he just had a little bit of a down year due to the change in there in Colorado with Bill Tucker coming in. But I think he's one of those guys that he's all over the field. Just as it reminds me of Luke Kuechly. Get the ball, get interceptions, sacks. I think he only had like 2 sacks last year, but like I said, I think it was a down year due to Mel Tucker coming in and new defense and all that type of stuff. So,
yeah, his tackle numbers were pretty decent as far as last year, but maybe he probably spent more time on his side of the line of scrimmage than it looked like. He spent more time in the backfield in 2018. Had a lot more tackles for loss and sacks in that year.
Yep. He had 114 tackles last year. So look at that. Just one of them guys that's all over the field and make plays. And we'll see how that defense does in year 2 with Mel Tucker, but we'll go from there.
All right, and Daryl, your well, actually, Eric, your number 4 guy here sounds familiar.
Yep, it's Dylan Moses. Like Daryl said, he probably would have went out. He would probably been in the draft this year if he wasn't hurt. But he decided to stay one more year and let's see what he can do with that Alabama defense. That defense was pretty good, but what could it have been with Moses there? You know. Yeah,
you think if they had Moses and Tua, they would have made a little bit of bigger push for the national championship probably this year.
No, I think so. I mean, Tua definitely hurt them, but I think having Moses there on basically the quarterback of that defense, he's a game-changing player. And to see what they did without those two was really impressive. So, yeah, I mean, if you plug those two in, I think it's a whole different ballgame. I really do.
And Daryl, while we got you here, who's your number 4 guy?
All right. I know people are going to get on me because they think this is a homer pick, but that's okay.
That's what Daryl does.
I'm going to take Tennessee's Henry To'oTo'o, highly recruited linebacker out of California. He stepped in as a freshman and started right away. And he didn't disappoint. I mean, 72 tackles, 5 for a loss. Didn't do a whole lot as far as a pass rusher, but that's not what they wanted him to do. Did really well when asked to drop in coverage. And I think it was really important for him to start off these 13 games for Tennessee right away because Tennessee's going to be hurt next year. They're losing Daniel Batuli, and they don't have a lot of experience coming up. So for To'oTo'o to get this, I mean, 72 tackles as a freshman, that's probably one of the best seasons in Vols history for a freshman. Next year, he's going to be leaned on heavily at inside linebacker. And
Daryl disappeared. His crappy internet strikes again. But anyway, to finish up what he was saying, he's only a freshman, and that's pretty remarkable.
He was a freshman this year. Will be a sophomore into 2020. So, in Devy leagues, you're probably going to get at least 2 more years out of him, and that's huge. I mean, if you're playing in these college leagues like Eric runs and that we're a part of, that's what you're looking for because he's going to soak up the tackles. Mm-hmm. And with Batuli and some of these guys out of the way, he's going to be the leader. So, yeah, I think 100 tackles is easily going to be attainable for him.
Yeah, and again, Devy is a name that you keep an eye on Linebacker, I know, is a position I like to target because, it's pretty easy to. I mean, you want to say it's pretty easy, but then you got guys like Cameron Smith and TJ Edwards that get tons and tons of tackles in college and don't necessarily transfer those skills to the next level.
Right.
So you got to target the guys that are like 5-star recruits that also do this and are athletic.
Right.
And can play all over the place.
And you just have to see what your scoring system's like. If it's a tackle heavy league, then you got to look for those middle linebackers and that type of stuff. If it's sack heavy, then you got to look for them outside linebackers, edge rushers.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As always, the asterisk is always there with the scoring. So Eric, how about your number 5 guy?
I have Arizona linebacker Colin Spooler. He's another one of those guys that's all over the field. Luke Kuechly type again. It seems like he's all over the field. He 3 straight years of over 95 tackles. So all over. He's 4 picks in his career. So he's one of those guys that can do. He can drop back in coverage. He can get in the backfield, get the quarterback, or whatever. But he's one of those guys that. Like last year he had 120 tackles, and last year he had just under 100. So it's one of those all over the field type guys.
I'm really surprised he didn't come out for the draft this year. I really am, because I had him pegged down as a guy that would, as a target that I want in some of my rookie drafts coming up, and I was like, man, he's not declaring for the draft. And I was like, wait a minute, this is really happening. He's going to stay for another year. So that really surprised me.
You see a lot of that though. Sometimes with these these defensive players, they want to kick up, stay back one more year and see what they can do. I think
it makes me wonder what kind of grade he got back from the NFL draft commission or whoever these guys are that gives you your projected draft grade. I would love to see that. I think that's something everybody would love to see is these, because we sit here and we're seeing Schooler and we're talking him up, but why did he not go ahead and declare? Now, sometimes it may be because you want to finish your college education. I get that. Kudos to you. But, and sometimes the draft class itself dictates it. If it's a heavy draft class, at your position, then you might want to stay for another year. But that kind of surprised me. It really did.
See, linebacker's not that deep this year either. I don't think. I mean,
me either, and that's
not like last year anyway. Last year was
right. Yeah, that was kind of head scratching to me. But we'll see. I mean, maybe it works out for him.
He is only 6'1" too, so he's a little bit on the smaller side. But I mean,
yes,
it doesn't matter. If you got the brains and brawn to play.
Right.
Anything matters, but he is a little bit smaller. But
well, I mean, looking at his stats, his sophomore year was his best year, and maybe he's thinking I had kind of a letdown year. Hard to say 98 combined tackles is a letdown, but he also had less sacks, less tackles for loss. No interceptions. He did get some fumble recoveries, but maybe he's thinking he can put a better foot forward. I'm thinking if you have a late day 2, day 3 grade, you almost say, well, if I'm there now, I might as well try to boost it up to high day 2, maybe early or late day 1 grade, possibly.
Yeah, I think the Arizona just had a down year last year, so I think that that could be a thing. He just wants to come back and prove himself.
Yeah.
Right.
And Daryl, how about your number 5?
All right, my number 5 is we're going to head up north into Big Ten country. Again.
From Iowa?
No, Dan, not from Iowa. God, I can't see. This is why I hate you. But anyway, we're going to go to the Great Lakes states of Michigan, and I'm going to take Cameron McGrone. Was a sophomore this year, didn't play anything as a freshman. Of course, they had Devin Bush and those guys. But he stepped in this year as a starter and really put himself on a watch list. 65 tackles, 9 for a loss, 2.5 sacks. They needed him with the loss of Devin Bush. I know they had Josh Uche, but he's more of a outside linebacker, pass rusher, and they're going to lose him in this year's draft. As many of you that watch the Senior Bowl, you know that. But so I kind of see Cameron as the same as Henry To'oTo'o for Tennessee. They don't have a whole lot around him at that position or behind him, so they're going to lean on him. And I think if you've watched Big Ten, those teams, Wisconsin, Iowa, Michigan State, Penn State, Ohio State, all those teams, what do they like to do? They like to pound the rock. Mm-hmm. Despite how good they are with their quarterbacks and their receivers, essentially it all comes back to them running the football, and I think this is going to play right into McGrone's hands. He had 65 tackles last year. I wouldn't be surprised to see him get close to 100 this year because I just, they don't have a whole lot, and they're going to lose some players like Uche. So I think they're kind of getting in a young transition, and he'll be a junior this year. So it'll be very interesting to see how he does this season.
Yeah, and I think, these are good starts for people looking to get their feet wet here with college. College IDP, definitely positions to take a look at because you've been hearing guys like Troy Dye for a couple of years now that are coming out. Chase Young obviously came,
and I think
with Bosa, the year before, you hear these guys coming out. You want to make sure you kind of know who they are before. So especially if you're playing Devy, because if you're in Devy, then.
And I think
make sure you get these guys.
Yeah, and I think with Devy, we mentioned, or Eric mentioned Colin Schooler, which I like, and some of these other guys like Dylan Moses who are probably going to be gone, and that's kind of what we want to bring you, but we also want to bring you these young guys like To'oTo'o and Cameron McGrone. That way, if you're in these Devy leagues, you can snatch them early and you can grow your Devy teams. And I don't know about you guys, but this is why I like Devy. Because I can get in tune and I know what's coming in my NFL leagues way before anybody else. I can kind of make my list, get my projections, and start building way earlier. For me, this is where I want to be right here. This helps me on so many levels. So we're going to try to help everybody with these, and we'll see what happens.
Another guy that I was thinking about putting on my list was Georgia linebacker Nolan Smith.
Yes,
number 1 linebacker from last year's class, and he didn't play much this year, but I think he's one of those guys that can really step up this year and see, show what he can do for that defense down there. So,
yeah, I'm with you. I wanted to put fifth, I really did, but I was like,
So I think one of the things that a lot of Devy analysts do on the offensive side of the ball is look at like vacated production and things like that. And I think I sometimes find myself looking at these huge schools that just keep pumping out. We mentioned Penn State used to be known as Linebacker U. Alabama linemen, Alabama linebackers, Alabama safeties, Ohio State edge rushers. We look at Ohio State corners. We look at these positions as being strengths of these teams for years, and they recruit them well, they train them well, and they get them in good positions to be successful in college and in the pros. So kind of taking a look at maybe who's gone and who can step into those shoes seems to be a lot of the strategy for, where these guys are. I mean, there's some other guys, not the obvious names. We have a guy from Iowa State, a guy from, of course, Tennessee mentioned. But yeah. But if you thought that the ribbing of Daryl was going to stop just because I'm not talking as much, then... Jesus. You should know better.
Yeah.
And Daryl didn't change much either. He's got a guy from Tennessee on his team, on his list. And
I
he
do.
does have the word Iowa written on the sheet. It's just Iowa State. So the Cyclones, not the Hawkeyes. But
Right.
But yeah, I mean that's we got about 8 names here that Devy players and college IDPers can take a look at and pick for yourself, obviously. But these guys all seem very productive and should be productive again this year. So is college IDP, Eric, now like your favorite aspect of fantasy football? Do you like it more than the pro game?
Yes and no. I mean, I like it because you have to dig a little bit deeper and to try to find these guys. If it is a Devy league, will they translate from the NFL or from college to the NFL type thing? It's hard to tell, obviously, but with some guys, not all of them, but with some guys. But it's definitely fun. I like those deep leagues and that type of stuff. So.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I think you tried to talk us into a campus to Canton league. Is that?
I did at one point. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm wanting to do that now.
Yeah, I think my hashtag no new leagues is just keeping me from joining any other ones because.
I'm with you. I don't want any new leagues either, but this campus to Canton thing is really intriguing, and I think if I add one, that's what it's going to be. So, Eric, if you find anybody that has one or you have one, let me know. I think that's going to be my ad right there because that's really intriguing to me.
And it's fun to get new people involved in it because IDP itself is not something that's, it's not it's growing. Definitely it's growing, but it's not big by any means.
Yeah, it's not as mainstream as offense.
So, it has picked up since I started playing IDP. It's come a long way. It's just not. Yeah, it's still probably not halfway to what it is, what normal fantasy football is. But just trying to. I think defense is a big side of it. I'm one of those guys that you got to encompass it all. I mean, if you want to, defense is a big part of the game. So that's
right.
I want to get.
And I will say this: while IDP is not as mainstream as Eric said, but it is growing.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody that I turn on to IDP, whether it's Devy or just regular IDP, even if it's just a generic IDP league where they start one defensive lineman, one linebacker, and one defensive back, not my favorite, but just getting those people turned on to that, I could probably count on one hand the owners or people that's come back to me and said, you know what, this sucks or I don't like it. Everybody has just really where have I been for so long? This is the new thing. So I think people love having that full control of a team, offense, defense, whatever. And I think that's what appeals to them. And, it gives them something else to look. You're sitting there on Sundays or Saturdays, whatever, and you're watching, you're like, well, they're on offense now. I don't have anybody playing.
Mm-hmm.
I think it changes it now. They're like, okay, this guy was on offense. Now I've got this guy on defense. So I think it really changes it. Everybody I've talked to loves it. Like I said, probably count on one hand the few that don't. And it's not for everybody. I get it. But overall, I think it's great and it's growing.
And it's changed. People, some people don't like change like that.
Right.
Well, I like, I want to stay with my own comfort zone. I want to stay with just normal offense. But you expand to defense, whole new world opens because you look at a whole different thing, a bunch of different things that, like, okay, why would I care about that? Well, now I do. So.
And now the Devy aspect, if you're like me, I mean, and there's a lot of people like us. I started out offensive only years ago. I expanded to IDP, and I know I'm weird, but I watch college on Saturdays, and I'm like, oh, man, wonder what he's going to be at the next level. And I'm even watching, crazy enough, I'm watching high school, and I'm like, where's he going in college, and where's he going to be 5-6 years from now once he gets out of high school and college? It's become what was once a hobby has become now a passion, and it's helped me so much with all my leagues. I wouldn't trade it for anything. Sometimes it can be a lot of work. I'll give you that. And there's owners that say, that's too much work for me. I get it. I understand that. But I think once you get hooked on it, man, it just keeps growing. And I'm sure Eric can attest because he runs some of these college leagues and stuff. And I love the leagues that Eric runs. So,
and it's also fun to find them. Let me say, Devy diamonds. To find those diamonds that are like
right
freshmen in college now, and they're like, he did great his freshman year. I'll keep an eye on him, and you hold him, and
right.
it turns out to be Chase Young or whatever it may be. It's like, all right, it's just a sense of satisfaction.
Right.
Found, so.
Yeah, and speaking to the niche, I guess that IDP is, it's a growing niche because I remember 5 or 6 years ago, people were scoffing at Superflex being
right.
You don't have 2 quarterbacks on the field at the same time, So I mean, and Superflex is almost now the norm. Like it's almost like
right.
If you're not in a Superflex league, then what are you doing? What are you even doing? Like, why are you? Why does this league exist? It seems like is the thing now. So, obviously the existing leagues that are 1 QB, even some of those are changing. Like my home league is changing to a 2 QB league or a Superflex league, not a 2 QB. But,
and it just goes to show you the difference from year to year because I'm sure Dan can kind of attest to this. 20 years ago when I started playing fantasy and was just a young gun out of high school, and I went to work and started playing a fantasy league. It was offensive only. And I can remember internet wasn't a big thing. You were getting the USA Today and getting the stats out of it and writing it down. And now it's a full-blown internet sensation, and it's involved into, these different formats, and you got these niches now, and now it's into college. It's just really crazy and amazing to see how this fantasy football thing has grown, and IDP is, I think it's just a matter of time till it catches up real quick.
Yeah, and we've gotten new listeners, new people checking out the show, new followers on Twitter and things like that. It's just interesting to kind of see the new interactions that people are saying, hey, I'm going to try this year. I'm going to dive in. We also had people that last year we had them try IDP and they just decided, it's not for me. And, that's I guess what I would suggest is give it a year.
Yeah.
Try it out. Try it out and check it out and don't say no right away. Kind of give it a year. If you don't like it, they could find new owners.
Right. And we've even had a couple of listeners in our listener league that, they tried it for a year and for whatever reason, it's too much or I don't understand or I don't like it, that at least they tried it and it wasn't for them. So, it does happen. It's not for everybody, but like I said, everybody I normally talk to and get feedback from, whether it's just a basic league or super in-depth like me and Dan and Eric play in, it's just I get nothing but rave reviews, and they're like, man, I can't get enough of this stuff. So
yeah, it's not for the, I guess, casual player, I'll say. But
Probably
even the casual
not.
player, if you're playing 1 or 2 positions maybe. But I think in college it may be a little easier to encompass everything because you have so many teams. Like, you can find players that are going to start.
Right.
There's only 100, like Division I or whatever they call it nowadays, FBS, FCS, whatever it is.
Yeah.
There's tons of teams, so you can find a starting linebacker on on 100 different teams. So I think availability is big, but. So I think it was a pretty successful first show. Not too many mishaps.
No, not too bad. I think we
not too bad, not too shabby.
Yeah, we didn't step over each other too much, which we'll learn. And
Daryl's crappy internet only went out once.
Internet, as everybody knows. But and if you're listening and you have. I think it's important for us to put this out here like this. If you're listening and this is the type of thing you like, hit one of us up.
Yes.
Let us know what you're looking for. We're always wanting topics. I mean, we'll talk about anything as long as it's IDP, and even if it's not IDP, you know. So,
yeah,
you got questions or whatever, let us know.
Yep, and for now, like I said, it's going to be on the IDP Nation RSS feed. We'll see where it goes from here. So Daryl is at DFF_DWin. I'm at SeahawksDan8. You can hit up the at IDP Nation Twitter handle. We haven't really got a Twitter handle for this yet. And Eric, where can they find you on the Twitterverse here?
I'm at EJH1528.
So initials and 1528. That the year you're born? that the year your beard originated from?
Oh, but my favorite number and my birthday.
That guy.
You know what? I'm so glad Eric's here. It gives Dan somebody else to berate besides me. Thanks, Eric. I love this.
Sorry, the beard's quite nice. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Hey,
it looks like it could have been around since 1528. So
this is the longest I've had it. This is the longest I've ever had it. So it's.
Yeah.
I'm digging it. I'll have to admit, at one point, I had a goatee that was probably 7-8 inches long.
Trying to be ZZ Top.
And it was fully blonde, but kind of. But it was about 7-8 inches long. And once it got past probably 5 inches, it went from blonde to like a red-orange. It was crazy.
Yeah, they're starting to get a little bit of gray in there, too. So it's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all right.
It's all right. This is the good thing that I can do is grow a beard. So
there you go. Well, for Daryl and Eric, this has been fun. Hopefully you enjoyed it. And we will talk to you, I don't know when, next week. We'll have to see when we have our next interview / info available. But we will, we're going to try to make this a weekly thing, I think. So, depending on our schedules.
Yep.
Work obviously happens every now and again. But
anyways, we're going to try to bring you some interviews. Let's not forget that. We were actually working on one tonight, and it just, with these kids and college kids and their schedules and their life going on, it's understandable. So, you know, some weeks we may have you some interviews, some weeks we may not, but we'll try to work those in as well, and we'll come up with some ideas of some different stuff we can do for you guys too.
Sounds good. I guess we can't say go Hawks on this. But what I can say is go Irish.
But you could say
I can say go Vols, baby.
What's that, Eric?
You could say go Battlehawks.
That's true. Go Seattle Dragons. They put up a fight.
Well, they did.
I may have made a few dollars off of XFL yesterday.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Good night now.